call this meeting of the Silver Falls School Board to order. Thank you for coming, everyone, giving up your seat in front of the TV tonight. If I hear any, cheers out there or whatever, we'll know what's going on. Okay, please join me for the flag salute.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, a few items are on our consent agenda tonight. Is there a motion for approval?
I'll move for approval.
Second.
Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. It's time for renewal of our 2 charter schools. So we need to have a public hearing about that to give anybody who would like to comment on the charter school renewals a chance to do that. So I'd like to open the public hearing. And Community Roots, Miranda, would you guys like to say anything? Or? Okay, yes.
Brought her bag of tricks.
She said that.
Yeah, so it's just your number system, numbers.
So my name is Hillary Conroy, and I am in my 3rd year of teaching at Community Roots, but I've been teaching since 2000. And before that, I taught I didn't teach in charter school, I taught in mainstream public schools. And every year, I have loved being a teacher. But when I came to Community Roots, I really found my home. And I think that's just a little bit of what I'd like to share with you quickly, how incredible and special just teaching is in general, and then my own feelings about Montessori and Community Roots. And so I think the materials that you have in front of you were created by a woman named Maria Montessori, and it's hard to imagine, but she was the first person that said, we need children-sized furniture. Children shouldn't sit at the same size chair and desks and tables as adults. She also so that has really positively changed every classroom in the world. She was that came up with what is being passed around in Montessori we call golden beads. In other schools they're called base 10, and you use them to learn the base 10 system, units or ones, tens, hundreds, and thousands. And so Maria Montessori was the one that came up with that. And so a lot of her contributions can be seen in every school across the U.S. And her contributions came from really watching children. And I think that that's one of the best parts about Montessori, and is that it's developed out from a philosophy where children were really watched to see what they needed, how they learned. And so we are so lucky because we have a public Montessori school right here in Silverton. In a quick Google search I did, in the United States, there are 5,000 public Montessori schools, 5,000 in the U.S. Schools, and only 475 are public. And one of those out of 4 is in Oregon. So I think it's a pretty incredible thing. I just want to also thank all of you for having such a positive relationship to be a charter school and to be seen as a positive and enriching choice instead of competition is really, I think it's special and really unique, and I appreciate it. So the one other thing I want to say about Montessori is probably from feeling the materials, you can see how concrete they are. These are 1st grade materials that we start with, or the student entered later, we would start with them. Everything in Montessori is very concrete and then moves to the abstract. And that progression of how it's moved is really dictated by the child. And I think the thing that hooked me into it is a belief that there is something within each of us and within each of the children that we know what we need. And so as being observers and watching our children in the classroom, it helps us to know what they need next and to help them progress. And so anyway, that's really exciting. And I think I just want to end with something that might surprise you. So we have a 3-hour work period. We only have one recess at Community Roots. And they eat and then they go to recess and they work in the morning 3 hours and then in the afternoon. And they work straight through. And the students in my classroom were really upset with me because they only got an hour and a half of work time, because only the other hour and a half we were singing, we were doing art for our parents to have a performance on Thursday. And I was like, they only had an hour and a half. How are they going to get all their math and their reading and everything done that they had planned? And I think those are really exciting times as a teacher, to have your kids like, what's going on? And you haven't given me enough time to get my work done. So anyway, thank you for letting me come and share about Montessori and Community Roots and the really special thing that's in Silverton and the relationship of our school district. So thank you.
Thank you.
And I'm just here to answer questions. I just wanted to, give Hillary the opportunity to kind of give you a piece of what we get to do every day. So I'm just here. That's fun.
That was very cool.
Yeah.
Any questions? Okay, thank you.
Thank you so much.
Bethany, Ryan Hari, and Corinne Bouquet. Please.
Good evening. We at Bethany Charter School, we are interested in renewing our contract with the Silver Falls School District. This is our 11th year as a charter school, and we feel that we are a thriving school. We have about 134 students?
136 work at capacity.
136 students, K through 12.
No, K through 8.
Sorry. I'm a little nervous. K through 8, and also we have a wait list in most of, or in some of several of our grade levels, and so we have appreciated the positive relationship with Silver Falls School District, and we'd like to continue that. Any questions, or make this process easier for me here?
Any questions? Okay, thank you, you guys. Thank you. Would anyone else like to comment specifically on the charter school renewals? Okay, see none, we're going to close the public hearing, and we'll be working on those renewals, and there will be contracts coming down the pike. Student reps, Elijah and Courtney.
Hello. To start our report for the month, this school district is a great one, setting a very high bar that is exceeded every time, again and again. A huge thank you not only from us, but from the entire student body as well, for each and every single one of you, school board members, to do this for the district, for all you do for the district. Thank you again so much.
So in recognition of School Board Appreciation Month, the students and staff would like to give you a token of our appreciation for your dedication and service to the Silver Falls School District. So
Gosh, thank you. Cool. Thank you very much.
These are valued at less than $100.
Thank you. Thank you very much, you guys. These are cool.
Okay, so now we have our normal reports. So I have the club's report for the month. So ASB, led by Johnny Farrow, is beginning to plan the Queen of Hearts dance in the Mr. SHS pageant, which is a fundraiser for Medical Teams International. We're really looking forward to fun, successful events and a great spring. The FBLA, run by Trish Conlon, is holding regular meetings and working on getting 50 members to sign up for the State Business Leadership Conference. If they place in the top 3 at this conference, they will be going to the national competition in Chicago, Illinois, where they can compete in over 60 different competitions. The Gay Straight Alliance, led by Katie Kantrowitz, are working to build up their club and are holding regular meetings to plan future events. The Key Club, run by Megan Miller, are also working to add more people to their club. They are also preparing to take their club to a Key Club convention in the future. The Speech and Debate team, led by Katie Kantrowitz, is preparing to compete at Pacific University this weekend. FFA, run by Scott Towery and Sarah MacArthur, is preparing for FFA Week, which will take place at the end of February. Recently, the Vet Science team placed first in the state, and the Ag Sales team placed 10th. They also have students competing at the District CBE Day on January 15th. The theater, run by Doug Osterhout, has just casted the actors for their upcoming play, Alice in Wonderland. The play is sure to be fantastic, and we invite you all to go and watch it when it premieres on February 27th. The band and choir, led by Frank Petrick and Jennifer Kircher, held an outstanding joint winter concert last month and are now practicing and getting ready to perform at festivals and future concerts. And that's all I have for clubs.
Now for your Foxes athletics. Wrestling. The wrestling team started out this year with high numbers and a lot of enthusiasm. We have a young team with lots of potential. We are now in the part of the season that has become known as the grind. During this month, practice will get harder and the competition will increase. The wrestlers will take their biggest strides in wrestling and will grow in character the most during this ranked team in the state. Throughout most of the tournament, we were sitting in third behind Newberg and Sandy. After a few tough losses in the semis, we slipped into fifth. The 132-pound junior Austin Reed wrestled at a close and hard-fought match to get first place. He was down by 1 point going into the third round and had to get a takedown in order to win the match. He scored quickly and had to work to keep his opponent down in order to win by 1. Junior Boston Field Merrifield, 126, and senior Cody Googles, HYT, also had a good tournament. Boston finished 4th and Cody's finished 3rd. Many of the athletes are very inexperienced. Nathan Butch is a sophomore and a second-year wrestler, but has managed to crack the varsity lineup and has been able to have successes at the varsity level. Junior Braden Sin is also green with only 2 years of wrestling under his belt. He has been able to compete with wrestlers who are far more experienced. These wrestlers and the many other wrestlers who are inexperienced have made great strides in the last 2 months. We expect to see even greater improvement in the next 2 months. Boys basketball. The boys basketball team is currently on a 3-game winning streak after defeating Redmond, Churchill, and most recently Marist Catholic. Despite an early defeat against high-ranked Marist, the team railed to take the lead just before halftime, extending it through the second half for a 16-point victory. With 5 wins and 3 losses, the Foxes have been led by returning starters Cole Chandler, Sam Roth, and Sam Roth. Toughness has been carried from the football field to the basketball court by Chandler, Logan Munson, Dylan Davis, and Trevor Cote. The rest of the team is striving to instill that same toughness as a core evidenced by tough defensive rebounding. Girls basketball. The Lady Foxes basketball team is 4-5 currently. They have 1 non-league game left when they host one of the top 6A teams in the state on January 9th in St. Mary's. The Foxes had a great win on Tuesday when they beat Marist on the road. Aaliyah Parsons had 5 3-pointers and Maggie Roth made a shot with 2 seconds left to seal the win. We are still waiting on the arrival of 2 starters from last year who have not played in a game this season due to injury. Senior captain Sequoia Risedam and junior post Testa Oster. We are getting closer to game ready and would be huge additions. Swimming. Aqua Foxes holding at 52 swimmers, 15 boys and 37 girls. 13 seniors, 9 juniors, 16 sophomores, and 14 freshmen. The boys and the girls both won close meets versus Central. The boys and girls both lost to Corvallis. Swimmers are working hard and improving their times. Looking forward to the meet next week to drop some more time. And that's all we have.
Great. Any questions for these guys? Good report.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for the
Thank you,
gifts. Those are
guys.
very cool.
Thank you again for all that you do for us, making the school district better each year.
Thanks.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Wear it everywhere, right?
Oh, yes, sir.
Yes, you have to wear it every
Right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And on behalf of the rest of the board, thank you for this other stuff that was up here. I haven't had a chance to open it up or anything yet, but thank you very much. Okay, we're going to move into audience with visitors. I would like, anybody can come up and address the board, but I would like to ask you to keep your comments to 5 minutes or under, please. And if there's a group with with a common thought, I would ask that you have like maybe one spokesperson to come up and give the thoughts of the group. We had a couple people call in ahead of time and asking for time, so I'm going to call on them first. Andy Diacetis.
Hello. My name's Andy Diacetis. I live here in Silverton. So hello to all of you. I understand that is School Board Appreciation Month, and I also understand that in regards to Eugene Field, you might not feel a lot of appreciation from many in the community, but please know that your work is appreciated more than you likely hear. So thanks for everything you do. It can't be an easy time to be a school board member in this district with that particular issue going on. I'd like to give a summary of the meeting that was held last Tuesday night. It was a community meeting. I invited people to come out to share some ideas about what to do next with regards to Eugene Field. I'd like to publicly thank Emmanuel Lutheran Church for allowing us to use their space, and Courtney Good for helping us secure the space, so thanks to them. I'd also like to thank all the people that attended, including 2 board members that were in attendance. Many of us were there for almost 4.5 hours and drove well out of town to get there, so thanks for attending. As for the summary, we had around 45 people show up. I may have been slightly over-enthusiastic with my hopes of 150, but I was thrilled with the 45 we did get. In attendance, there were representatives from Silvercrest, Butte Creek, Prattham, Scotts Mills, Community Roots, Monitor, and of course here in Silverton, including yes and no voters from in town. The goal was to get an equal number of no voters and yes voters from the last election. I think we were pretty close to 50-50. The goal of the meeting was fairly simple. I wanted to try to get as many people from different backgrounds together in an informal setting and see if we could agree on a common direction to pursue. I had attended several smaller meetings prior to this with the goal of learning more about the no voters and what it would take to convert them to yes voters. Several board meetings ago, I heard Tom state that there were people out there that want to vote yes on something, but they just haven't been given the right something yet. It was the first time I had heard that, and it got me excited. Once these meetings started happening, I began to realize that he was right, and I've been saying it ever since. There are no voters that want to vote yes on something. In the presentations, we heard 5 different ideas from 4 different people. One idea was to maintain the status quo, doing improvements at a community level at Eugene Field until the community is in a better place to pass a bond. There were 2 ideas that included the renovation of Eugene Field, and there were 2 ideas that included modest new construction up behind Robert Frost. Granted, none of these are new ideas. I have to assume that every single idea that could ever be possible has been discussed at one point in the past 30 years. And every one of these ideas has ultimately been discarded, either by the school board or by the voters. The irony is that one of these ideas that have already been thrown out is ultimately going to be the thing that is done. This is very important. There are no new ideas left, only combinations of old ideas. It is time to reopen our minds to some of the ideas that have already been deemed unworthy and give them another look. Other people this evening, later on, will go into the details of the plans that we discussed. I will point out one major highlight of something that was overwhelmingly agreed upon by most people in attendance. We are all very concerned about the current Schlater Street modular option. There's a lot of concern for what that will do to damage the district financially and what it will do to further damage the lack of trust that exists between the board and some of the community. Many people in the community do not feel heard by the school board. Whether that's true or not, I cannot say, but that is no doubt a common perception among many. We say we are a united district, yet many of the people feel they do not have a voice. Forging ahead with a plan that could potentially damage the financial stability of the district will only widen that gap. Many of us feel that it is simply shifting the problem from one area to another. There has been talk of going for a private loan to help finance this. That will give us the money to do a project, but what will be used to pay that back? Toward the end of the meeting, there were 12 to 15 people still in attendance. It was a perfect microcosm of what I was hoping to see. Rural voters, in-town yes voters, and in-town no voters, all slowly moving into a tighter and tighter circle. That's when the walls came down and people started truly speaking their minds freely without the fear of backlash.
Andy, about 1 minute.
Okay. The highlight for me came from a gentleman from Silvercrest. He said that I used to come to these meetings all the time because I wanted to make sure the bonds were not going to pass. I haven't been coming for about 16 months because, quite frankly, I knew the last bond didn't stand a chance. I came tonight because you guys have got me worried with what you have going on right now. I see that as progress. By all accounts, you are ready to move on the Schlater plan. All we ask is this: start fighting for another bond immediately. In various subtle ways, we've been told that you've heard enough from the community and gotten more than enough feedback. I couldn't disagree more. With a little bit of effort, I was able to get close to 50 people together from every walk of life in this community, and progress was definitely made. If every one of you went to the zone you represented and got 45 voters in the same room, that would be well over 300 people. That would give you a pretty good cross-section of what our community wants to do. Start a dialogue with people you haven't spoken with before. Encourage collaboration. If you're invited to meetings, please participate. Listen to what the other side has to say. Come up with a clear, concise plan for the future. When you do, you've got people from all corners of this district ready to get your back and help make something happen.
Okay, questions for Andy? Okay, thanks, Andy.
Was there any consensus on the, in the meeting, or? I think you mentioned that people were scared about the Schlater. Is that what is that?
Yeah, without knowing more about what the financial ramifications are, there's a lot of concern about that. Because no one seems to, we had some estimates from the work session, but no one really had any real answers as to what that was. The people at this meeting all wanted another bond sooner rather than later. Granted, that's why they were all there, but that was a consensus among the group. They didn't want to wait for some arbitrary amount of time to pass before going for another bond. Everyone there was interested in voting for something soon. Another common theme was don't neglect the rural schools. Provide maintenance funds for the rural schools. That was across the board, in town, out of town. Everybody felt that was pretty important.
Okay, other questions?
One more question. You mentioned that the turnout was a lot lower than you had anticipated. How was the meeting advertised to the public, and for how long?
Oh, for about 2 weeks. There was a write-up in our town that didn't have the specifics, unfortunately, because we didn't know what the specifics were going to be when that was published. And it was in the Silverton Appeal. And then there was a Facebook page that was dispersed around. And that's where a lot of the people that I knew of, that's how they had heard about it.
So do you think if you had a second go-round of a town hall meeting like this, that you would have a much larger attendance?
I would hope so. I think ultimately it's going to take somebody with some influence. Like, I'm just a guy that 5 months ago, no one in this room probably knew who I was. I think if somebody in this community had some juice, well, the way I keep putting it, I think it could get people's attention. But yeah, I would hope. I mean, I think that the interest is there. I'm getting phone calls from people now that weren't able to attend that wanted to chime in, and that were sorry they couldn't make it, and hoping that some things continue in the future.
So are you thinking about doing this again?
Yeah, we'll see. Maybe someday, but
Okay.
We'll see.
All right, great.
We need some momentum from somewhere. I was hoping to get more momentum from something like that, and there were pockets of support, but there's a lot of people that are interested in doing different things.
Yeah.
All legitimate things, and that's where someone, I think, that has the ability, and I'll steal this from somebody else, and this was pretty true. Somebody else stated, "I wish Judy Schmidt were still here," because I think we need somebody like that to bring some people together to actually want to accomplish something.
Okay. Anything else? Okay, thank you, Andy.
Thank you.
Thanks, Andy.
Dan Johnson.
Good evening.
I forgot to say, when you come up to speak, please sign in and name and address, and then state your name for us, please.
I agree in regard to Judy. She was like a little sister. We grew up together up on Church Street, and she was a great person. I'm presenting tonight, and then I'm going to address a little bit in regard to the agenda that I noticed, and plus the resolution that's being proposed. You know, a lot of people have been working hard. We had this meeting on Monday. Almost no one wanted their children or any children put in prefabs or modular classrooms for any reason. It was a very loud, clear, and significant indication. And if that were to happen, of course, the board is going to end up with a lot of grief. And according to this resolution, maybe that's not going to happen. But currently, the board is 0 for 2 on bonds. And in light of the resolution verbiage, whereas governing boards of Eugene Field School have planned for discontinued use of the school through 6 bond election attempts dating back to 1984. I think there's a clear message in that, folks. They want that school. It's not that they don't want to vote for something. In these days, it's going to be a different vote. First of all, I'm not going to go through my whole presentation because some of it has been undercut by the resolution that wasn't part of the work session. I'm kind of interested in this came up in the last few days, evidently, since the work session. I'm not sure when the resolution was drawn by the whole board or discussed by the whole board. I think your public would like to know, and I think the public would also like to know who in the private sector was this discussed with, since you know that there's so many people being involved with this, trying to assist with the board's investigation of need. I've gone out, I've interviewed businesses around the school. They want that school there. Walking and traffic from cars and that is the lifeblood of our downtown. Secondly, you know, I'm up for giving the folks a chance to vote on a new school versus remediation. But 2 things. One, if I go back and look at history, and I'm going to have it in my packet to you, remediation of the Schlater Street School there's no demolition in it from the architect that originally looked at it. You folks have been talking about demolition of the center of it. I can't get my head around the thinking process. And I have copies of that for you. The second thing is, I've checked with multiple folks, Jeffrey James, Bob Schmidt, who you all know, Gene Pfeiffer, Skanska representatives met with me here today and walked around Eugene Field School. I have people I know in that company. They agree and indicated that Dalkey Construction's figures on remediation is attainable and that costs appear to be in line for the planned actions.
For what scope?
Eugene Field School.
Well, for just the remediation of the seismic piece or
the whole
for all
thing.
deficiencies?
The whole thing. I took a few other things away from that meeting. They were impressed with the current construction at Eugene Field School. They especially like the trusses that support that playground area. That covered area is unique. It's old, but it's there, and it has a lot of significance. They agree that the building suffers from a severe compounded lack of maintenance. And other than that, they say it can be fixed for what the cost factors are. It can house up to 450 students, And if you have a 10,000 square foot addition with the Dalkey plan, that it's very, very good for the downtown area. It's good, and a lot of people like all these things that have failed in the past. 6 times? Because maybe the plan wasn't right. Maybe the timing wasn't right. You know, 84, there's been some swings in the economies. Right now, I think people want to vote for that school.
Dan, 1 minute, please.
Fine. Eugene Field School, they said, was in much better condition than the remediation of the Staten schools that they just completed. Those schools were in such bad shape, they couldn't get everything done over there. But they said this school, the Skanska people say it's a doable thing. And within the budget line items and whatnot that have been presented. Therefore, I know that there are a lot of people that are relatively new to the community, but you have to understand the significance and importance of that building to the downtown core look and feel of this community, with the children walking, the parents walking with their children. People love watching those little kids in their day. There are kids that bring their dogs up to the poodle shearing place just to watch. And there's interaction, and it's a good thing for these kids too. And the plan also provides off-street parking for teachers at no detriment to the playground area. So anyway, that's my presentation, and I'll be happy to take any questions if any exist.
I had one question, the line items. Does that include the pipes, the water pressure, and the technology upgrades for that building?
Yes. Yes. That's correct, isn't it? I think Gene Pfeiffer's presented stuff on that before. Now, I'm not a part of Save Old Schools. I want to make that very clear. I've been working on my own separately in that, and I've seen what's happened to Dalkey, and I think that, to me, is an absolute embarrassment for our community for what's been said about them by being associated with Gene Pfeiffer. I think that's just horrendous, because I think we're all better than that. But anyway, yes, it does include that from my information.
Okay.
Anything else?
So you would favor going out for another bond? A much more
Absolutely.
modest bond, I'm assuming?
Modest bond.
So
10.2 million.
That's the figure you need? Or you would need? Or
Yep.
would be needed to fix the school?
That's correct.
That's not the figure that Dalkey sent though, right?
No, but that's including a dedicated accounts that are set aside for either construction or maintenance of the rural schools, so they have something in the mix. And that way, if we have overburdening in the rural areas because of transporting kids to other schools or whatnot, you can add another room or two here and there. That way, it gives them longevity and sense of, and feeling that their schools are gonna be protected. And I've talked to folks out in the industry, or out in the agricultural industry, and to be quite frank, they don't know, up to this point, they're so confused as to what the board has been doing, and they don't know what the plan is. And now tonight, we have another plan that was different from the work session information that I had. So it gets very confusing for folks out here. And I'm not sure why these things shift and flow so fast when people are out there trying to do things to help the board, but yet we don't hear anything in the interim as to what's going on. Communications are pretty poor. Everyone says that.
So just a question then about, you gave us a figure of 10.2 million. Can you break that down? How much of that would go to Eugene Field remediation, and how much would theoretically go to the outlying districts?
Yes, I can.
If the proposal were to be made.
The Eugene Field School, it would be 53,000 square feet of available space at the current site without building classrooms anywhere else. This option totally refurbishes the school, adds 10,000 feet, provides off-street parking for staff across from Subway, establishes a drop-off point for parents on the north end, includes the purchase of a corner lot on First and B, so that that can be configured into, that's including buying some property there. So then, everything's brought up to safety codes and use of full status. Will also include the lunchroom and kitchen. And you'll have 4 modular classrooms that are surplus and give you more space for the playground area. And today, by looking at the downspouts, some that are packed right now and have not been cleaned since fall, which means water's going to be bubbling up, staying in the troughs up there and damaging the buildings further. All you need to do is stick something down through there and flush them out, let the water flow. But evidently, that's not something that's being paid attention to. And I believe that that's the administration's responsibility to take care of our structures. Regardless if we're going to close them or not, they're going to be useful for someone in the future, but I don't think the people want to let this one go. They want this school in the downtown core area.
Other questions?
So one more question. You mentioned the cafeteria or the food service facilities there. That's a really big headache.
I know it
at
is.
Eugene Field School. So how did you actually examine that?
You enlarge the lunchroom area underneath the new addition. Take the lunchroom out of the gym. You can turn the gym stage into a music stage and not have the music people out in the modular. I think they're out in a modular, is that correct? That's what I've heard.
I think so. I think the music's in a modular.
And then today,
So where are you going to put the lunchroom? You going to dig more basement?
It's right there.
There's not a lunchroom down there, it's classrooms now.
Well, I know it's classrooms now, but is the gymnasium where the lunchroom's supposed to be? I mean, from what I've gathered in that, from the construction of that, Gene, am I missing something here?
The cafeteria is currently the gymnasium.
Yeah.
There needs to be other spaces as proposed to the 1.8 million by Dalkey on the addition.
That's right. So therefore you have an area and with an elevator, where those children that are handicapped and whatnot would have access and egress for that area.
Dan, did Skanska, did they enter the building?
No, they did not, because of some of the things I've heard in the area about entering the building.
So they just took a per square foot average?
Well, they've sent stuff in before on this. It's in the file. They had somebody already take a look at the building.
Yeah.
Is it the same people?
It's either that person's boss or an equal. They did communicate, though, with that individual. And 2 people came down from Skanska, one that I've known for many, many years, personally. And I asked them as a favor. And they came down and gave me a straight shot of information. And I would have loved to have been able to have them go through the school, but it was during the afternoon, and then school was out, and I thought that would be an imposition. And I respect that. I did go to the office and mentioned that we'd be walking around the building. And I did find a dangerous object that the kids shouldn't find in the playground and turned it into the office afterwards. So, but anyway, I think that answers your question.
So the Skanska people pulled the old files.
They've looked at it,
from
yeah.
their review
Oh, yeah.
before they came down.
Yeah, and they've seen all of the Dalkey information. And these folks, they're just a really nice group of folks. Skanska folks are good. Dalkey's been excellent to work with. I talked to Larry Dalkey today. I verified a few things. He really just wants to help us in this community. Like I mentioned in some stuff that I wrote, it's really unfortunate that some people have indicated that he's just after the business. That's not accurate at all, and it's really unfortunate.
Are there other questions for Dan?
Yeah, you mentioned some the buildings up in Stayton that Skanska recently.
Yeah.
How old were those buildings? Did they
equal? Some 1940s. and they were in worse shape.
Yeah.
They didn't take care of buildings either.
Yeah.
In fact, one of the guys grew up and went to school in those schools. And he said one school hadn't been touched since he'd been there, and maintenance-wise.
Yeah.
Well, we're seeing the same type of results here in many cases.
I started turning a little bit on this about a couple of years ago, and I realized that there are when I heard seismic and hollow clay tiles, and you can't reinforce that. It's just an assumption I made, And I recently saw a building up in Milwaukee, built 1916, that about 3 years ago was rebuilt with a seismic grant from the same outfit that we recently got 2 grants from on that. And the other day, when I went to the website, I searched for the list of the schools that got seismic grants along with ours. And there was a building in Salem, an elementary school building that just happened to be down the street from where my daughter was playing basketball, and I went down there and looked at it. It was built in 1922, I think, or 20. And in searching around, there's 2 other buildings in Salem that were recently redone, and you can pull that were done that are older than Eugene Field. All 4 of these buildings I'm referring to were unreinforced masonry, and they've all been seismically retrofitted, and all 3 of them had a higher seismic dangerous rating. It was higher than Eugene Field. Eugene Field was ranked a high degree of seismic collapse. All 4 of these were ranked very high, and they did fix them. Now, that doesn't automatically mean that I feel that this one can be done. I just feel that it deserves a fresh look.
Yeah. They indicated
in respect to the no voters. That's kind of where I'm.
They indicated that this could be seismically rated and that properly and taken care of but through remediation. And they said that over in Staten, what they've done is they repaired their needs over there even without the grants, and they're now applying for the grants, and they may get the grants after the fact. So therefore, some of these grants that are handed out, if you document them well enough and show that the need was truly there, you can go through, remediate, and then get money back from the grantors.
Okay.
Interesting.
Okay? Anything else?
Okay, thank you, Dan.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Would anyone else? Steve?
Oh, by the way, I have a letter here from someone that I know. It's in my packet also, and she's submitting a personal comment to the board, Mrs. Johnson. And this is unusual.
You know Mrs. Johnson. Okay. Thank you.
Steve, did you sign in?
Yes, I did.
Okay, thanks.
Good evening. My name is Steve Kays. I reside at 502 Lewis Street, Silverton, Oregon. This is the very first board meeting I've attended in my life, and I hope it will be the last. Because I am incensed by what I've been sitting back and watching. Quite honestly, I don't have a bone to pick with anybody in this. I don't care what you do with Eugene Field. You've moved way beyond that with me. The thing that bothers me tonight, and the reason I'm here, is to talk about a word, and that's democracy. You have been guided, and it has been suggested by the superintendent that you should float a bond issue. It's evident that you were misguided the first time because it didn't work. Whatever criteria he used in encouraging you to do this was deficient. Then he came to you and, let's do it again. You bought into it. And again, it didn't work. It was deficient in some way. Now, I am sitting here wondering about the 7 of you who I label all as intelligent, certainly. Why are you even listening to him? How many times, Tim, if your field man came out to you and gave you ill advice on your farm and all your nut trees died tomorrow, and he encouraged you to redo it again and you did, and then they died again, would you call him back the third time? Now my message to you is quite simple. You're not listening to the people you should be listening to, and you don't know how to go listen to them. I told you, Owen, you put it out this way, it's going to fail, didn't I? And it failed. And I'm not the only person that said that. Here is your problem. And it's already been touched on. There's no trust in the community as far as the board and administration. None. You don't know what they want. We had a gentleman come up here and on his own put together what sounded to me like a very good meeting, gathered some good information. And he had a great question. With the 7 of you being board members, how is it he can put something together and achieve 45, never done it before, and you folks don't know enough people in town or have enough acquaintances in the school district that each of you could go solicit people? That's something you need to think about here. But the thing that bothers me most is that when you veer away from following the Democratic majority, you are treading in an area that caused wars. When you have personal agendas and you do not do what the Democratic majority say, there's been wars started over that. So it should not be a surprise to anybody that there's discontent and there's a decisiveness in the district. That word doesn't belong up there. That insults my intelligence that somebody would put a word together up on that wall. If we were together, we wouldn't be here. And it buck stops with each of you. You were elected by a majority. You since then forgot what the majorities, you don't care anymore. Your minds are set. This gentleman here, I don't know him, but I'm telling you one thing, I won't trust anything that comes out of his mouth because he has not proven to me that he knows the people in his own district. If he had, he wouldn't have given you bad advice. And the bottom line with me, with the superintendent, is when after the second failure, he came to you and tried to convince you that, hey, if we look at it this way, those no votes mean yes. Now, if any of you want to sit and try to justify that statement out of the gentleman that is in charge of raising our kids, my grandkids, then I need to talk with you.
1 minute.
I know you got a tough decision here, but I'm going to give you one out. There's a way to get out. You need to go back because you don't have all the facts. That's apparent from what's been brought forth that has gotten by the superintendent's desk anyway, since the last budget or the last bond failure. But there's a way out. You can each build your character. And how do you build character? You admit that you made a mistake. I've made a lot of them in my life. But my dad told me there is honor and integrity in admitting when you have made a mistake and you're wrong. And if you don't want to accept that, then hey, you can do what you want. My speech here tonight might not have any effect. But your integrity and your character is on the balance tonight. You don't follow the Democratic majorities, what they want to do, then I hope you're big enough and man and woman enough to take what they're going to dish out to you, because there will be repercussions. Thank you.
Thank you, Steve.
I just have one comment to that.
Yeah, go ahead, Sharon.
I take a lot of offense to you telling us that we don't care. There's not one of us on here that we didn't get on this board because we just wanted to. I think everybody on here, we have different ideas, and sometimes we agree and sometimes we don't. And I listen to people out there, and there are so many different people with different ideas right now. And trying to come up with a good plan that's best for the kids is not just a simple, oh, we don't care. And so I just want to make it clear, we care, and the kids are our priority. And we may not agree, and we're really searching for a good answer, but we care.
I have no problem with that. I complimented you.
didn't.
Excuse me?
You said specifically, we don't care.
You don't care about what the majority people vote. If you did care, Julie, why would you not be going out and finding out what the majority said?
I have a comment about that too, Steve. We've spent the better part of the last 2 years getting public opinion before we went out even for the first bond, but especially the second bond. Our main emphasis was to go out and get public opinion and hear people's opinions on what they thought, what they wanted, the whole spectrum. We spent 2 years doing that. So when you come up here and tell us we haven't done anything to even get people's opinions, that's, in my mind, that's totally false.
Okay.
Totally false.
Okay,
So
then one of two things happened. The people were not honest with you, or you did not listen to them. One of the two. The bottom line is this, Tim. We shouldn't be here. We shouldn't be putting this argument in front of our kids. They are impressionable. This shouldn't be around the dinner table. This should be settled together, and it's not together.
that's what we've been working to do. So thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Thank you. I'm Gene Pfeiffer, and I want to make just a quick comment first. I feel that all the opinion gathering that you did, Tim, and all of you, that what I heard come from it was the primary thing, and the two people that were hired to do that, and they had 13 groups that they met with, they came back and told you the priority stated by the district was do something about Eugene Field School. They didn't say empty it, tear it down. They said do something about it. So that's still an option on the table. I did go to the meeting that Andy Diacetis arranged on last Tuesday. It was a good meeting, about 50 people, and they were pretty well balanced, I think, with yes and no. The beginning of the meeting was regurgitating old stuff about sickness and mold and streets and all kinds of things, but it finally settled down to what the really issues were. And I want to repeat what those are in a priority of 5. The first one was, and it was unanimous. I'm going to tell you that no's and yeses were all saying the same thing on this one. It was unanimous. It was stop the current effort to use Slater in the manner that it's being done. They said stop it. That was the priority. The second was go for a bond. Now, there wasn't 100%, but there was very few that didn't say go for the bond. Out of that, I'd say maybe 3. You know, just by listening to him, it was very adamant. The third was that there are 2 options available, but there was no consensus that evening as to which one, although in the end, with the strength of opinion of the rural people, I'd say that the more likelihood would be that the remediation of Eugene Field School would pass, whereas $16 million for a new school would not. The fourth was that the rural district is being neglected. The statement was really frank. It was kind of interesting to hear it, that everyone should realize that the whole district belongs to all of us, not just those in the urban setting. It belongs to all of us. It belongs to us too. And we've been doing all this stuff ourselves, and nobody pays us to do it, but we take care of our buildings when we can, and we volunteer the labor. We don't see that in town. Of course, we've got bigger units of facilities. The fifth was do construction as soon as possible. So go for a May bond. In fact, it was a May bond that was stated. So all these things were very much emphasized, and true that it was only that number of people out of how many, 77,000 voters or something? You know, that's small, you could say, but there was a good representation, and they took the time to stay for 4.5 hours. I thought it was significant. So I was disturbed tonight to see this resolution and to look at the factors in it, so I'm going to jump to that part, and that's what the emphasis was to not do. All of these people unanimously see it, don't do it. And when I look at it, I wonder about the numbers. I've looked at it before. I've gone to the minutes, and I see numbers like in the resolution, 2.5 million. But when I look at it and know that we would be putting our children into Schlater. Schlater, you've had at least, and I have them in my files, at least 3 reports that say that the whole facility is seismically improper. It needs to be fixed. The gymnasium, as nice as it looks, the connections between the roof system and the wall system, great, beautiful concrete tilt-up building, how could it possibly fall over? Those connections are not adequate to 1993 code changes. So we're saying they're going to put the children in them, and the lower structures are ones that showed reaction to the 93 earthquake, and the old part did not show those reactions. So we're saying we're going to put children in them. We're not going to spend money for it. So I did some quick numbers while I was sitting here. If we take care of these areas that you're talking about, not counting the old 3-story section, that's about $4 million. And then you're going to put students in Mark Twain. It has the same problem. It has also been in the report that it's seismically inappropriate. So we're going to move our children out from one place and move them to these other places. I put about $1 million on that. And we have to do some other things. I don't think the conditions seismically is as bad at Robert Frost, but they're certainly there. So there's another $1 million. So at a minimum, I feel you're going to spend about $7 million if you try to do it properly at all. If you do it properly, it's probably closer to $10 million. And the sullen realization is there's no money in it for the rural schools at all. Now, when you look at if we were to do the new, the proposal I gave, and I didn't elaborate it on a month ago, I've got, let me give some numbers, please. So 16 million of that, 12 million would be the facility and the soft cost of design itself. 400,000 would be for security and technology, which was in your budget, and 3.6 million would go to the rural. If you went to Eugene Field School in terms of a remediation, 6.8 takes care of the building itself and in addition to it. 0.4 would be for the same technology, et cetera, and 2.8 would be for the rural schools. That's 10 million. The 10 million would then be based on the factors that your bond company gave. It would be 58 cents a thousand, and this new school building would be 92 cents a thousand. Those are the things that we need to put in front of people, that when they can look at it, they say, we're going to be paying that much for 12 years, but after that it falls off to just this 58 or 92 cents. At that point, we can remediate Schlater for the junior high school. The costs are going to be different. Now I feel it's 10 million. At that point, 12 years from now, it could be 16 million. But those are all things we could put on a plan. Right now, we're reacting to, let's jump. Well, we don't want to jump. We don't want you to jump. So please take this in regard. And, maybe it seemed to be a small group, but they said unanimously, stop. Tell the district to stop what they're doing. That was the #1 priority.
Okay, questions? Okay, thank you, Gene.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Hi, my name's Sarah Weitzman. I live here in Silverton. And I wasn't planning on speaking this evening. This is also my first board meeting. And unlike my cousin in the background, I really feel that you guys do hard work, and I really respect the work and the time that you put in, and the commitment to the kids and the district. And I know that that's tough, and thank you. I just wanted to get up here and tell you that also for 2 reasons. One, I actually was a part of that meeting last week, and I did present an idea because I personally would love a brand new school in Silverton, and I know that's not going to happen for a long time. But, and I would, like the community to pass a bond, but that's in the past, and so we have to look forward to the future, and I know that's not going to happen for another 2 to 4 years. And please not 12 years, but let's hopefully in the future. But I have to say also that, using phrases, and no disrespect to Andy or Jean or Dan, but unanimously is a strong phrase. So anyhow, I just wanted to say thank you for all the hard work, to continue the momentum to move forward, and please pass this and get those kids out of Eugene Field as quickly as possible. I would love to see a 2015 date on this personally, but I just want to say please get those kids out as soon as possible. And I think that there is a great amount of community members that have your back, that I know you talk to, and I know that there's microcosms of different groups of all sorts of different people. But ultimately, this is for the kids, and I know you all know that. And I just want to thank all of you for your time, and I can't wait for this to happen. Thank you.
Any questions? Yes, Sarah? Sarah, excuse me. Could you add maybe a question or two?
I would love to go.
So I'm just curious why in your thinking you think that the two separate bond requests, second one much lower than the first, failed in the community, and failed by such dramatic margins when we had a much higher than normal turnout, and a much higher turnout in this school district election than in the elections in surrounding communities at the same time. Why do you
I think that's a very loaded question, for one, and I also think that I can't specifically answer that myself because I'm not a election expert. I'm certainly a longtime Silvertonian. My family's been here for 5 generations or more, and I've lived in Silverton a long time. I do know that personally, my own opinion is probably language related. I have looked at lots of different other bonds at different school districts and the ones that have passed, and I think that had some of the language been more specific possibly to like facilities or exact this goes to this and this, that, that being said, I'm not a bond language expert. I don't know how to write bonds, but I don't know the answer to that, David. But that would be an excellent question to have the answer to. And I hope one day we will pass it, because I know people continue to live in the past, continue to be confused by the high school bonds, because I think ultimately it's a confusion issue for a lot of people I've talked to. They don't understand pre-unification versus the unification bond. They don't understand that the first high school bond couldn't ask for more money. And I think a lot of people are confused about how we get money for our schools and for our maintenance and how we build new schools, and that can only come from the taxpayer base. So, when I look at my tax bill, which is large, I see that my base is, what I have to the bond and what I have to the school district, and I'm happy to pay those taxes, and I know that that's struggle for some people who are homeowners, but that's the only way, that people that we have, we need to go higher. We need to go state legislation to try and fix the way that we fund our education. That's my personal opinion, but sorry, I can't answer that question. I'm not an expert.
So how about one more quick question? You would still want the students out of Eugene Field if it were completely renovated?
Yes, I would, clean, David.
Safe,
I would.
Wholesome? Why is that?
Because
I'm
actually,
really lost on that.
I was also invited to that meeting at Dalkey Construction a few weeks ago, and I will refrain from my personal opinions about that meeting, because I just felt it was very inappropriate for that meeting to happen, not having anything to do with Dalkey. I just feel that in general, I think it's a step backwards from all the strong work that you guys are doing. But it was very clear at that meeting by one of the other engineers, and I'm not an engineer, I do not have expertise in that, but it was very clear from his comments regarding the hollow clay tile that has in Eugene Field. He referenced the Milwaukee building that Tom did, but he also referenced how difficult it is to make that structurally sound. And basically what I took away from that was the building's going to fail. It's just you'll have a few extra egresses and exits for some people to get out. Not that you're going to have a structurally sound building. It's going to fail. It's just that you might not kill as many people. You know, that's what I heard, and I know that that's not what some of the people around me heard, but I don't want to see my child in that building at all, and I will not let him go there. So I'm very excited that you're finally moving forward with this action item, and I'm just thrilled, and I thank you for your strong work.
So just one more quick question.
Sure.
So you feel comfortable with your children at the Schlater Street campus, the old portions of that building, which are the only building in the district that sustained any damage in the 1993 earthquake, and there are no plans to remediate any of that seismically.
You said old.
Yes, you did say old, which is the main part, which is no longer
and the
used.
New sections. The new sections were also damaged.
Well, you said old part. The old section has not been used. The other sections are flat. Am I correct?
The gymnasium would be used.
I'd feel more comfortable in a building like that than I would Eugene Field, and not just because of the seismic, though. I mean, there's so many other things going on at Eugene Fields. It's not just about seismic. The classroom spaces are not up to date. You have, I can't speak to the whole list because I'm not in that building every day, but I've heard the list, I've seen the list, I've seen the presentations, I've watched the school board meetings. But it's 93 years old. It served its life. It served a good purpose. I wrote that to you guys in my letter to the board. It's time to move on. You know, it's sad. I know it's sad and emotional for people to let go of that building, but there's a point where you have to separate your emotion and look at what's best for the kids. And what's best for the kids is to move them out of that building.
Anything else? Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you, Sarah.
No,
Anyone else? Ralph?
My name is Ralph Fisher, and I'm a resident of the Victor Point area of the district, the southern part of the district. I served on one or two of the task forces several years ago that debated the issue on what to do with the schools. And I guess my message is, and I guess I'm also familiar with the situation in Staten. Staten went 40 years without approving a bond, I believe, and I think they took an effort prior to getting their bond passed is trying to find out why people voted no on bonds. And I guess that's what I would, there's been a lot of debate. And I guess that's the thing that I don't know is I can't answer is why people voted no. And I would encourage you to somehow, whether it's through a poll or whether that's funded or a community survey of finding out why they voted no. I think, we can either be optimistic or pessimistic. And the pessimistic side, looking at the voting numbers over the last two elections, would say, well, we lost by 5% or 7% or 9% or 11%, whatever that number is. But I think when you look at the numbers, precinct by precinct, I think every precinct compared to when we had a bond passed was short about 3 to 6%. And so when that's relayed down to numbers, I think all we have to do is find 600 voters to go from no to yes, and we can have a bond passed. Somewhere where there's a new structure for elementary kids or remediation, but we need to find out really what the public wants. So.
Hey, Ralph, I just had a quick comment. You mentioned that you got to find 600 voters to go from no to yes. You got to find 300. If you flip three, if the difference is 600 and you
well, it fell by 1,000.
Flip them over. I believe it's, and part of one of the interesting things that's really, a lot of our rural area feels that they're nervous. Some rural folks feel that probably the common thing out there is that we're going to close your rural building. Two rural buildings just got significant investment in their buildings, and the argument to, I think Butte Creek's got a big enough community, but, you know, Scotts Mills was one of those nervous buildings, nervous communities. You know, they just got $1 million that's coming their way, and school districts don't put that type of money or hire grants to put money in buildings like that. You know, those are two communities that no votes can be mined into yes votes.
Well, I guess, but the point is, it's not an urban rural.
Right.
It's not a urban rural issue. Is, I think if you look at the numbers from when the bond passed to when it failed, is every precinct was about 3 to 6% short.
Yeah.
I don't think that's right, Ralph. I don't have the numbers in front of me, but I believe it either passed in town or came very close to passing in town. But every other precinct was.
Yeah, it passed 52% in one precinct in town, and then the next highest was 40. There were two precincts at 48%.
Yeah, I think that's probably right.
Yeah, but each one of those was 3 to 6% lower than what it should have been. That's my point. So.
Mm-hmm. So you were around during the time that we tried unsuccessfully a couple of times to get the second half of the high school built, and you're aware that we actually hired a professional pollster to find out the answer to the question why those bonds failed.
Yeah, and I think that...
And we passed the bond the next time.
Yep. So, what did that survey cost? I think the survey work is what?
I don't know.
5,000 to 12,000 or something?
You completed the same survey in 2012, David, and that cost you about $10,000.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ralph. Anyone else? Go ahead.
Good evening. I'm Fred Van Nickering. Tim, I think we have an understanding that I get longer time because it takes me longer to write my name. Is that right?
I'll start it after you're done writing.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank you for letting me talk tonight. I appreciate it. I believe in the great tradition of excellence. I believe in the great tradition of excellent education at Silver Falls District can continue. But it's going to take people giving up their battle lines. It's going to take people giving more than taking. I, for one, voted no on the last two bond ballots. My reasons, right or wrong, were based on my perceptions of whether the plans were in the best interest of the whole district. As voters, we are required to weigh the issue before us and vote how we believe the question in front of us will affect our families, our neighbors, and our community at large. So to move forward as a school district, we must first listen to those who will be required to help pay for the quality education. I would hazard a guess that most of us tend to listen more to those who we agree with. The hard part is really listening to those who we disagree with. I believe we are still struggling to find solutions to our facility problems because we are listening way too much to those we tend to agree with. I believe with time and the facilitation of more community meetings like the one that happened at Emmanuel Lutheran on January 6th, consensus can be reached. It really doesn't come down to whose plan is best, but how we listen to each other and actually hear everyone's concerns. There are several plans being discussed in and about Silver Falls School District community. I, for one, believe that bonded debt is the only way to deal with facilities expenditures. But to get patrons to buy into bonded debt, we must listen. We must listen to those who are really struggling to pay bills. We must listen to those concerned with the safety of their children. We must listen to those concerned about the future of their community schools. We must listen to teachers all over the district trying to provide quality education with substandard tools. That's my prepared statement. And after listening tonight, I want to just tell you what my journey has been in this. And I did vote no on the last two bonds. I met with, so far, I think 4 different meetings with people that I disagreed with. That's not easy to do. But I think it is important. I met the meeting with, I'm sorry, I forgot your name. Jennifer. There were 6 of us met that night. A lot of good discussion. But through that discussion, we learned what each other's concerns were. I met at the Dalkey meeting, learned a little bit more about the actual technical aspect of what's going on. Yeah, and there was concerns there too. There was pro and con. I met at the meeting at Emmanuel Lutheran, and I spent my share of time shaking my head saying, no, that's not right. But by the end of the meeting, you're listening to those people and you're getting an idea of where we need to be. Where we need to be, I believe, is not with this resolution. I believe we need to be spending our time with meetings just like Andy did. Maybe we should pay Andy. Andy, would you be okay with that?
Then I would do it together.
But I really believe that. I really believe that through those kind of meetings, we can come to a really good solution to this. It doesn't have to be one that divides us again. And that's where I believe this one will go. It will divide us again. So please, I would hope you would consider not following through on this resolution. Thank you. Any questions?
I'm wondering, you asked us many times here to listen, and you said early on that your perceptions caused you to vote no on the first 2, but I never did hear your reasons. I'm interested to know why.
Okay. Be honest. I mean, here we go. I mean, through not listening to people, I voted no probably on the first one because I was still hurt over the passage of the high school bond, which, with a little bit of prudence, I came to a couple meetings and spoke to that very thing, and I don't know how many of the board were on the board at that time, but that was too extravagant. I believe with a little bit of prudent spending that we could have built a new Eugene Field at that time and a new finish the high school, with no problem. But I was adamant I was going to vote no on every bond. The second one I thought was just too fast. I think I came to you after the first bond failure, and I at one of these meetings and said, don't rush into this. Talk to the people. So I voted no again. I will vote yes on a bond that is prudent, that is, modest, that gives our kids safe space. For in town, I don't even care if it doesn't include out of town. But what I do want is assurances that those communities are going to be cared for in a long-range plan. That Victor Point, Silvercrest, Scotts Mills will be considered in a long-range plan that gives them assurances that they're, the best you can. I know there's nothing is for sure, but they want to hear those sort of things, I believe. My school got closed. I'm from the Monitor area. Yeah, I was hurt about that too, but I'm over it because I got to look in the eyes of people like Jennifer and hear their story. And I also believe in Mr. Pfeiffer. He's been maligned, and I don't think that's fair. But he's a professional. Maybe he didn't present it right. Maybe he misspoke on some things. But we have to listen to professionals. We can't listen to people who I'm not going to speak to what's right in those buildings and what's wrong or how we remediate them. I don't know anything about it. But I do know what's happened here, that we haven't listened enough. That's my opinion.
Okay, thank you, Fred.
Yep.
Anyone else?
Hello, I'm Bill Sieber. I was at the meeting on Monday as well as listening tonight, and I think I want to kind of reiterate what I said last month a little bit, just quickly, and that is to get real movement forward for us to stay together as a community. We do need to look at where that center mass goal is, publicize it, let people know what they're getting for their money, and go for it. And we don't need to do short-term fixes that are going to either waste money or make it difficult for our schools to currently continue. In what I heard at the meeting on Monday, I would say that there's a variety of options on the board that are pretty decent. I also see that there are concerns that would be hurdles to getting that decision made. One of them being that you might have a perfectly good solution for Eugene Field that can completely remediate it. As an engineer, I can say that it can be designed and done well by the design professionals that know how to do it. And if they tell you they can bring it up to code, they can bring it up to code. They know their job. That's not the question. The thing is voting is politics. We have people that are scared of that building for various reasons. They're also scared because we've been telling them it's bad so that we can do something else. The smoothest path that I see from what I hear, from my viewpoint, is that we originally said we're going to buy this piece of land for Robert Frost so that we can build another school up here eventually, and we're going to defer maintenance on Eugene Field so that we can save up money to build that new building. I think that's still probably the smoothest path in our community, just because that's what we've been telling the community. That's what we've been selling for 30 years. I don't know that it's still the best place. I mean, I'm not a pollster, but that's just what I'm hearing. Personally, as an engineer that's also a farmer that probably has some of the oldest crap around, I love the idea of remediation on Eugene Field. It's a beautiful piece of the community, and I think it can be done right. But nonetheless, there are hurdles of any way we turn, and we first need to find where that center of mass is, band together so we can excite everybody toward it. Because until we get everybody excited in one direction, we're not going to pass anything. Thanks. Any questions?
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Bill.
Anyone else? Okay, we're going to move on to discussion items. Whoops. Oh, sorry. Sorry, Angie.
Talk about it.
Didn't see you jump up.
Thanks. I'm Angie Miller, and I live in Silverton, and I teach at Eugene Field. And I don't want to talk about this. I want to thank you for your service. I have a letter that the staff came up with together, and we've all signed it. And I'd like to read it if that's okay. And it's followed by signatures of the students for you as well. The staff at Eugene Field would like to take a moment to recognize the hard work done by the Silver Falls School Board. School board members volunteer. The amount of time and energy you 7 people have put into working on a solution for the closure of Eugene Field while continuing the regular work of the board has been phenomenal. The fact that you volunteer, big letters, to serve your community in this way without pay is a testament to the level of your commitment to the betterment of the district for all of its families. That contribution cannot be understated. The volunteer efforts of you, our school board members, have the potential for tremendous benefit to the community as a whole and to the lives of the students individually. By serving the district in this important governance role, you lay the foundation for our future. Each of you who make the time to generously provide this important public service does so because you care. You care about our children's education, you care about the schools being the best they can be, and you care about the next generation and their future in our community. You've rolled up your sleeves. You've gotten involved to improve things. Selflessly accepting responsibility for the educational process, you help our children grow into successful, joyful adults. Your Silver Falls School Board service is truly a work of heart. I hope everyone will join with the staff at Eugene Field Elementary in celebrating let's not sell it. No, let's sell it. Celebrating School Board Recognition Month in January and take a moment to express your appreciation for the volunteer efforts for the Silver Falls School Board members. Our district benefits greatly from your service. We just can't thank you enough. I know it's a very difficult position you're in, and you have worked hard. You've spent several years, and you've looked at the history. You've looked at professional reports. You have done your homework. Unfortunately, there have been a lot of ideas going around, and they tend to be taken as fact. And most of them are opinions or someone's perception of the facts. And to answer David's question, I've been thinking about it since you asked why the second bond failed. My opinion, from what I've heard at these meetings and from the listening to the scuttlebutt in the community, outlying schools, in-town schools, high school, everywhere, is that there was just too much information and they didn't know what was true. And it wasn't that they didn't trust the board, it's that they just didn't know what to believe anymore. Because they heard, yes, remediation's good, no, remediation's bad. And they just never got a clear picture of what the real facts are. And I think that we've done a good job of finding professionals that have given us facts. And I'm saying we, thinking I'm one of you, but you have. You've done a good job. You've done your homework. And beyond the staff supporting you for all of that you've done for us, I think that we need to move ahead with a resolution. It's time. You've done it. It's time to move ahead. Any questions?
Questions? Thank you, Angie.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it. Thanks for your kind words.
And if you'd like copies of the cover letter with the signature, I have those.
Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
I have a new idea.
You can go, just go. No, I'm sorry, Chris. Go ahead.
300 million bond. That gets us a 50-year plan with 40 years to watch them kind of go away. And then we do it again. I think we can do this. I ran the last campaign, I'll work for that one. Honor and integrity, trust, history, all of which I pay attention to. I'm a listener, just by nature, and I choose to listen to all sides, and then after the bond failure, I especially chose to listen to the other side. I don't disagree that Eugene Field can be rehabbed. I disagree that the campus is no longer set to be a school. I hear a lot of hypocrisy. I hear that the last bond was too complicated. Schlater Street needs to be a junior high, but the last bond was too complicated because they were moving all the students around. Well, how do you make it a junior high without moving the students around? Modulars. We don't want our children in modulars. They already are. We're talking about 2 more buildings. 2. It's okay for them to walk in the rain out of the 3 modulars at Eugene Field, but if you put those 3 modulars plus 2 more at Schlater Street, it's no longer okay. These are things that confuse me. Because I work. Why did people no vote? Vote no. I heard a lot. I ran the last campaign along with another co-president. I don't live in the district. I don't get to vote on it. So therefore, I'm advocating to raise your taxes, so I should vote no. Let alone the fact that I've been volunteering in the schools for 14 years. Both of my children come here. My ex-wife is a teacher, or was a teacher for Silver Falls. I'm tied to the district. There's a lot to it. History. If we're going to invest in a school, let's invest in a campus that can be there forever, Slater Street. I believe that. So if we want to save our history, let's put it into some place that can be saved, that can grow in the future, that can become more, versus 3.5 acres, 6 acres, or however many acres we want, because if we buy this and we build that and we save that, at least with Slater, we're clear. We know what we have. It'll grow. It'll be the future. So it's something important. I listened very much to the other side, and I just wanted to make sure that we understood that most of it seems to be confusing issues. So, after that, 300 million.
Questions for Chris? Okay, thank you, Chris.
Thanks, Chris.
Anyone else? Okay. Still looking? Okay, we're going to move on to discussion items. 2014-15 financial audit. We received the annual audit and the letter from the accountant in our packet. Andy or Scott, do you guys want to chime in on this to start out with, or anything? Or
I'll let Scott comment as well. For the sake of the public, the board's already received this information. It's a clean audit. It demonstrates that the books are in check and that Silver Falls School District is actually, based upon the information that we've received, improving in its financial stability over the course of the last 12 months, based upon a couple of figures. Scott, you want to comment on those?
Sure. If you, I'd like to draw your attention to the first part of the management discussion and analysis, which is starts about page 6. It has the Roman numerals at the bottom. But some of the things that you'd want to take a look at are Roman numeral 4, which is the change in net position. When you see that increasing, that typically responds to a general increase in the financial condition of the district. You'll see some of it on Roman numeral 5. One of the key aspects of that was the reduction of expenses, which was the latter part of the bond refunding that you had made from 2013, reflected savings in 2014. So there's a variety of different discussions about some of the pages that are happening behind the management discussion. And of course, you have about 50 pages of financials to go through. And if there's any questions on those at any time, please don't hesitate to call or let me know.
any discussion or questions from anybody? Okay, congratulations on a nice clean audit, Scott.
Yeah, pleased to see
Good
that.
job. Good.
I agree.
Discontinued use of Eugene Field. A resolution that we have in front of us tonight was in our packet. Andy, do you want to make some comments on this?
Yeah, I have a few thoughts to share, Mr. Chair. I actually have some prepared notes that I'd like to share in just a moment, but before I do that, two thoughts have come to mind as I've been listening listening to very thoughtful information by all of those tonight, and similar to the thoughts that have occurred over the last multiple years now that we've been discussing the future of Eugene Field School. But each of them came from two individuals who approached me in the community over the course of the last few weeks or a couple of months. And they don't necessarily apply directly to my role, but rather to your role, and I just think that they're appropriate under this circumstance. One of them is related to just how we operate as a governance system, and again, I think I'm preaching to the choir with this. While we had a speaker tonight refer to our democracy, and absolutely we live in a democracy, of course, where the majority rules in many decisions, like as in bond elections and so forth. We operate under a governance model. This person said, remind the board that you operate under a republic governance model, meaning we have elected officials who are placed in a position of listening to the public based upon a pursuit that they may or may not have to sort that out, to clarify, to refine that, but continue to listen to the public before they, as a governing board, make the decision, and the majority of those elected officials, their decision will stand. And I thought that was just a valid reminder for me as well, and I'm sharing it with you in terms of that's how our governance system operates. And again, I'm preaching to the choir and don't want to dwell on that, but I think it's an important reminder. The second point, though, is that I believe that the information that you've heard tonight reminds me of not just the differences, and somebody said make sure that you identify what some of the commonalities are. And I think every one of us, every one of the individuals that you've heard from, and you yourself, me included, we all have standards of care for our students. We want to see the best education possible that we can for our students, every one of them in the district. But there are different approaches to get there. And we are fortunate that we live in a school district that we have quite a bit of choice. Parents have a choice essentially as long as there's room available to send their child to any school in this district, and we never have a problem in doing so, and for the most part filling up nearly every one of our buildings. And so those are all like standards of care that fit within that. And I've heard a couple people talk about this tonight as well, talking about the value that this district provides and what we do in many cases in a much better degree than other school districts, even neighboring districts do. And I think those are just those common values that we need to remind ourselves of, that regardless of what our feeling and our sentiment may be about this specific issue or cause, that if we were to put everything on the table, we would very likely have the majority of things in common as compared to a few things that are different. The reality is the differences are pretty significant. And so I have, based upon input that I've heard from this board over the last few meetings, and interest by the board to have some additional direction to move ahead, I have drafted the resolution that's in front of you for your consideration, as I placed in the memo for you, that is for your consideration to review, to modify, to dismiss, or to take action on it as is. With that said, I'm going to refer to my notes now because I'd like to be certain I share these specifically. I'd first like to start by expressing my genuine appreciation to you and the hundreds of community members who have been part of an ongoing dialogue about our aging Eugene Field School building. As you know, the district spent in its most recent effort of the last year and a half prior to the November election working closely with community members to identify priorities which best support all students into the future. One of those priorities was to find a safe and effective option to meet the current and future needs of our Eugene Field student, teachers, and staff. I'm going to pause right there just for a moment to say, to take care of the future needs of our Eugene Field students, teachers, and staff is more than just the building itself. It's what that building can provide, and as you have all, and I think the 7 of you agree, you have to have a visionary approach if we move ahead in order to identify that standard of care that we have for our kids. So it's more than 4 walls in a classroom and a cluster of rooms and hallways and an office. It's what can that building provide as we move and look forward, even to the next 10 or 15 years, but more realistically, 30 or 50 years down the road. So while some residents feel strongly about keeping Eugene Field School open, and I get that, I understand that, and I respect that, the majority of public input and the engagement over the past year and a half shows that it's time to relocate our Eugene Field students, teachers, and staff members. Based upon conversation and input that I've heard from the 7 of you, the majority of your board members have indicated the same interest, as have multiple boards and community members in the past, which is reflected in the resolution that's in front of you. So that said, the plan in front of you allows for this relocation by August 31st of 2016. That's nearly 20 months from now. In my mind, we simply can't wait any longer. And as superintendent, I believe it's my duty and responsibility to share that recommendation with you. Ultimately, it's your decision. It's not mine. There are many variables to address in this plan. You've heard a few of them tonight. I've heard some concerns from the school board members, and I think there is some validity to those, that's for sure. As a result, the estimated cost to do this plan, which is a very modest plan, is $2.5 million. It could be more, it could be less. Some of the planning efforts still need to occur in order to best refine that, but we think it's a realistic estimate at this point. If approved by the board, the relocation would be funded through a combination of sources, including a long-term loan paid back from current land sales, lease agreement revenue, future construction excise tax revenue, and if necessary, future general fund revenue. I believe the results of the last two bond election attempts have shown that the voters are asking you to complete this project within your means. You're in a fortunate position to have access to resources to do this. There are many school districts that don't have the availability of land sales that they've had, or land sale contracts, or even the potential to sell additional land in order to have this revenue, or construction excise tax system. And I think it's important to note that this plan also guards your $1.5 million in reserve for maintenance, continued maintenance at all schools. I'm with you, and I think this is one of those common agreements. This is not the solution that we were hoping for, and I think everyone in the room would agree with that. But it's the most appropriate one at this point in time. It also allows time for the seven of you, for me, for your administrative team, for us as a school district, and most importantly, for the public, the time necessary to do exactly what I've heard tonight, to continue the dialogue, to regroup, to pause, to step back, and to take the time that's necessary in order for us to come up with the most appropriate long-range planning for this school district. That's part of the resolution as well. It also allows us the time to focus our efforts back where they belong. That's on student instruction and student growth. So, Mr. Chairman, those are my comments this evening. I'll turn it back over to you for board discussion, or if there are any other questions.
Okay. Questions for Andy, or just general discussion on this tonight?
I'll start. Andy, what investigations have we done to the seismic safety of this building? I think the single-story structures are probably, well, I don't know. I know that one of the structures is, in reading a Dole Olson Weeks report from I think it was '93, referring to some of the damage that one of the wings sustained in the quake, and I believe that's one of the wings we're going to use. And just in looking at pictures of it, it seems to resemble that same architectural style that's what's up at Mark Twain, that more windows and wall situation. But what worries me most is that the parts of the buildings we're going to use are attached to the three-story building in the middle. They're hooked to it. They're supporting it. So God forbid if that code event occurs, which way is the building going to go? North, south, east, west? I hope it goes south. And is it going to pull something with it, push something? That it's so. One of the biggest hammers that was used to, convince it to. The biggest piece of data to use to get us out of Eugene Field, I feel, is there at Schlater. In fact, I think it might even be worse because it's hooked to that building, and I just don't know what considerations we have for that, or what do we, what thoughts are there for that? I don't, concerned that there might be some some isolated pockets of people. People aren't connected. It's not a community. You got some kids over there, some over here, and I'm so on board with Eugene, with the conditions at Eugene Field, and they've been over the top for way too long. But I'm just concerned that the good folks and the good staff that signed up that worked hard to close Eugene Field are going to be going, oh, is this what we really had in mind? And I'm just concerned that there might be a lot of hard feelings all around with this, and that's why that's why I've been really, I met with Chris Mitchell. He was, I think he actually sought me out. I think he left, but he was the guy who reached out to me to speak to someone from the other side, and I've been trying to make an effort at doing that, and I really believe that there are no voters who want to vote yes on something. And especially knowing that we've got some, you know, I come from the rural areas. I relate to that nervous rural voter who's concerned that their buildings are being neglected. You know, there's a pile of no votes out there. I feel that all in Scotts Mills and the north end of the district and Butte Creek games, I think there's some yes votes after. That's why I've been kind of one of the head rabble rousers. I don't know if I've been a rabble rouser, but I've just been advocating for rethinking of it. And I guess that's my theme, is that of my criticism of this is that this is not an educational community. I might be too disjointed, you know, and I'd like to give it some time for the staff and parents to look at and critique. You know, we had time. You know, I'd like to know what the staff of Mark Twain thinks, because those folks are going to be teaching here now. We certainly heard from the staff at Eugene Field, and so I hope that we could certainly keep this as an ongoing discussion item. And just anyway, those are my thoughts. Thanks.
Well, I come from a rural community as well, and I've actually heard exactly the opposite. I've heard from some yes voters that have said, if you go for a third bond, I'm going to vote no, because we're not respecting the voters' wishes. The voters have clearly spoken twice, similar percentage vote. I don't think we have an idea what we're going to do with Eugene Field, but this proposal will give us time to do that. The seismic conditions at Schlater in the single-story sections, I don't believe are any worse than most of our other schools in the district. But going into Schlater does correct a lot of problems that our folks are dealing with today, minus the seismic issues. I think this plan is fiscally prudent. It doesn't increase taxes, which I've been hearing loud and clear. Don't raise my taxes. We use existing resources, both in terms of buildings and dollars. We meet the need to move out of Eugene Field as soon as possible, which I think is critical. We've heard tonight about needing to do more work and more talk and figure out what people want to do. We need to get kids out of there. We can continue talking, but this will allow us to move out and continue the conversation and put kids in a safer place. I heard concerns about modulars. Central Howell, my oldest daughter entered school. There was a modular there. I think it was fairly new at the time. Still being used as a classroom. That was 25 years ago. And I think the modular classrooms at Eugene Field are fully utilized. And in fact, what from I understand, those are the preferred classrooms at Eugene Field. And this just gives us an opportunity to continue a discussion about Eugene Field and what to do long term, whether we sell the property, whether we revamp it, whether we. Another option we could even talk about is leasing the property. There's lots of options, lots of ideas out in the community, which actually have been part of a problem. This allows us time to do that. It allows our staff and community to heal a little bit over all these discussions. I think we've got some morale issues in the buildings right now that need to be addressed, and we need to get past this.
I would agree with you on a lot of that, Wally and Tom. I understand your points about about if we would do this, about Schlater campus being a little bit, or maybe feeling a little bit disjointed, but that's one reason, and I personally think it's way past time to get out of Eugene Field. I'd like to see it happen sooner than even 2016, but I like that part of this plan, that it gives time to even bring the staff together and bring staff in so they can be a part of planning this and planning how they're going to make it work best. I think it's very workable. I mean, we've always had modulars at buildings. When I was at Mark Twain, I was 7th grade, I was in a modular out in the little courtyard there, and it was no big deal. I think it's a very workable solution. I don't think it's best for kids to keep them in the Eugene Field building. That's what it comes down to me. I think that building is, and we've heard comments about lack of maintenance and everything else, but that building is 92 years old, and that doesn't show me a lack of maintenance. but the building's worn out. It's inadequate for kids anymore. And to even remediate it, it's going to be the same building. I mean, some of the walls might be a little stronger, but you still have the same space with things like full-day kindergarten coming up. That's the reason that they have lunch in the cafeteria, because they need they need the basement for classrooms. And I just think it's past time to get out of that building. I think this plan accomplishes that. Sure, it's not our first choice. It's far from our first choice, but I think we could pay for it. I think there's even other property that we've talked about putting on the market that we could pursue that more. It also, keeps the discussion going long term about what we're going to do. But in the short term, it gets us out of Eugene Field, which I think is important. I had a couple other thoughts, but I lost them. So I think it's time, and I think this plan does that. Of course, it's not our first choice. Of course, it's not ideal. Oh, bond, going for another bond. I'm totally against that. For one thing, it would be really, really difficult to get a bond on the ballot by May. It takes a lot of work to get a bond on the ballot, and we don't have time by May. So then you're looking to November. And then what if that bond passes? Well, then you're sitting in the same situation, or what if that bond doesn't pass? Then you're sitting in the same situation. Part of the reason we're still in the Eugene Field building, and we've been trying to get out of that building since 1984, part of the reason is because bonds fail, and we don't really know what to do. And so, we'll wait for another bond. Well, in my mind, we're past that point now. I think Eugene Field has gotten to the point where we can't say we're going to delay this another 2 years to see if we can get a bond passed. I think Eugene Field has gotten to the point where we need to get kids out and move forward. And I think this plan does that. So that's my 2 cents. Anybody else?
Well, I've got a question for Andy. Andy, of the $2.5 million estimate, do you remember what amount roughly is thrown at or is put towards, I guess what I'd call investment in that property that would carry over to the time when we would do a permanent construction there, whether it be off-site improvements to the roadways, things like that?
Based upon the conversations we've had with the city, is that any off-site improvements that were completed would maintain the would serve the purpose of the building as long as the use of the building, the occupancy remained the same. And so any off-site improvements, even if you were to place modulars on the site and part of the costs were to address those off-site improvements, assuming that building were to remain as a middle school, even after a bond were to be passed someday, those off-site improvements would remain and would not need to be improved unless the occupancy were to change. It's my understanding.
And then obviously, then there's some money put into that estimate as well, I understand, for some improvements to the existing classrooms, some HVAC and other things like that would obviously have a continued use lifespan as well.
Correct, but minimal.
Minimal.
Truly minimal.
We're just thinking about, one of the things that we've heard is that, well, it's a waste of money, and I guess I'm bringing up a point. It's not like you're throwing $2.5 million all towards things that don't have a useful life beyond, modulars or our specific use.
Correct. And keep in mind that the portions of the building that would be used, I believe the dates of construction were in the mid-50s, with the most latest construction, I believe, in 1970. And we have other schools that we're still continue to operate in with similar age, not as old as 1921.
I'm in favor of this resolution mainly because it gets the kids out of Eugene Field. Of all the discussion that I've heard, I have yet to be convinced otherwise the way we voted for the original bond, and that was to get the kids out of Eugene Field. I think it's great we're having these meetings and collecting more information, but I think it's a priority to get those kids out of Eugene Field and continue the dialogue. I don't think anybody is saying, quit talking once they're in the modulars. That's when the real discussion should take place. But at least we've taken care of the kids. I told somebody, I've had several people call me and ask me about what I thought, and they'd been to these meetings, and I said, you know, if I was to vote for myself personally on that first bond, I would have voted no, because I couldn't afford the extra taxes. But everything that was being said, I had to vote yes, because it was the right thing to do. And a comment that was made earlier, Andy, that you basically railroad us into these decisions. Just the contrary, I spoke with Craig last week, and I told Craig what a great job he was doing. I said, I am not surprised, but in a way, how smooth the transition was from Craig to you. And so I just wanted you to know that I appreciate what you do.
I didn't get it.
You didn't ask for my permission. But that being said, Tom's comments on the seismic at Schlater might have some.
You know, we're just trading one problem. As Tom said, I think that one of the big drivers in the move to get out of Eugene Field was the seismic issue. We had Dr. Gabe, for example, and other community members talking about the urgency of getting students out of that building before it collapsed on them, and I think that we're not paying attention to that argument very much at all when we talk about putting those same students into Schlater Street, the old portions of Schlater Street, and that's just one example. But I think if we look very carefully at the proposals that we have here tonight and look at the accurate figures for the remediation of Eugene Field rather than sort of inflated figures, we'd have a very different conversation right now. So that's my position. I realize I'm in the minority in this forum, but maybe not necessarily in the minority with the voters.
Just a clarification, we're looking at putting the students in the newer sections of Schlater.
But those are the sections, the very sections that were damaged in the 1993 earthquake.
Yeah, and my concern is that they're supported and attached to the height, to the part of the building that's even of a higher risk of collapsing than Eugene Field. I mean, that's pretty serious. I mean, I think if it was rated, I think most of the single-story structures of Schlater. I'm not a licensed structural engineer, but just from what I read of that the Wilson Weeks report, I got a feeling it would probably, some of those portions of the parts we're going to reuse I wonder if they're would rate at the same collapse rating, just because of the way it's built like Mark Twain, and Mark Twain has seismic issues.
Just really quickly, one other thought I have. We keep comparing the seismic issues between the buildings. Eugene Field, the problems go so much far beyond the seismic issues. You know, we've heard over and over, it goes far beyond the seismic issues. So of course, all our buildings, you know, a good number of our buildings might have seismic issues, but the problems at Eugene Field go so far beyond that. It's not even a comparison as far as I'm concerned. So it's just my point on that one.
No, I agree that the issues are there's a long list of them.
Yeah. Just one more comment. Every one of those issues can be addressed and remediated at very modest cost to the taxpayers, and we will have a building that will serve the educational needs of our students for a long time to come.
So, I guess I can say something at this point.
We're not going to let you speak.
Yeah, I'm totally for getting the kids out of Eugene Field. I think it's the right thing to do. I don't think this proposal is necessarily the right way to go about it. You know, I'm not convinced it's the best idea. To me, it seems like a waste of money that, in the long run, we've been saying how we're saving money and we're trying to like make everybody happy. And at the same time, there's not enough money to make everybody happy. And that's unfortunate. And I think this is a Band-Aid solution that is not a long-term thing. Yes, I do want the kids out of there, but we need the support of the community that says we want those kids out of there. And they haven't backed up with money financially for bonds throughout the years. That I don't see it as this particular proposal I'm not necessarily for.
Anything else? Okay, we will move along. Administrator and staff reports. Andy, presentation on Division 22 standards.
Yeah, you're required by law, statute each year to, or the school district is required, and I'm required to report to you and to the public our compliance toward the Division 22 standards for operating schools, elementary and secondary schools in the state of Oregon. We're required to do so by January 15th in this forum. There have been some changes to this this year, and as part of the ODE, Department of Education mandate relief efforts, districts are actually required to submit assurances only related to 5 of about 55 of these standards. They are related to the 5 are modified diploma, equal educational opportunities, instructional hours, teacher and administrator evaluation and support, and complaint policy. And here to report that we're in full compliance of those 5 standards. I do want to share with you, though, that as part of our review, because we're still required to review all of the standards, as part of our review, I have discovered that required annual training, which is for sports safety at Section 421, especially specifically related to training for middle school coaches related to student concussions. That we may not have had the annual training of all of our coaches over the last 12 months. The administrative team and I are investigating that, and we're coming up with a corrective plan to address that, to be certain that we are. All of the high school coaches have been entirely and appropriately trained, but it appears we have a couple of holes specific in the middle school, and we have a job to address that, and we will correct that. Otherwise,
Andy, can you follow up with us after you figure that out?
Absolutely.
Let us know what happened and what's being done.
You bet. You bet. So otherwise, based upon my review, I'm reporting to the school board and to the public that this school district is in compliance with and implementing all remaining applicable standards for public elementary and secondary schools in the state of Oregon, as said in OAR Chapter 581, Division 22. That's it, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you, Andy.
And my second topic there, which has been discussed a little bit tonight, is that even with all the discussion related to Eugene Field, I think it's very good news that this district has qualified for 2 seismic grants for 2 of our schools at Butte Creek School and Scotts Mills School as well. We're pleased that the efforts by staff and by our consultants that went into preparing that application. You were the only school district in the state of Oregon to qualify for 2 schools. Multiple school districts applied for many of their schools and got 0. So I think that's a credit to your staff and to the folks that you brought on board to help out with this task. So congratulations to the staff and to this entire district.
Very good news. Yeah. Very good news.
Yeah, if you haven't already, express our thanks to ZCS.
You bet.
Engineering.
Yes.
Great work on their part.
Yeah, they did a good job. Scott, financials.
Yes, your financials are on a canary yellow page, a few pieces of paper in your packet. Been very happy with the way the accounting software has presented some of the data for you, so if you have any feedback on that, that's great. You have your operating statement on the first page. Your second page is your current fund balance through November. And then your third page is the general fund, both the areas subject to carryover retention and non-carryover retention. So are there any questions on any of the financials?
Questions for Scott? Okay.
Thank you very much.
Jamie McCarty, Victor Point, Silvercrest. Do you have a? Do you have a?
Very last in this, everyone's nodding off, and that's okay. Board Chair, thanks for having me, and just want to
Thanks for being
express from Silvercrest and Victor Point our gratitude, Board Appreciation Month. And the buckets in front of you are kind of, I called them a survival kit, and my wife got pretty upset. She said it's an inspiration kit. But going home tonight, I'm going to tell her it is a survival kit, and I was right. Your job is incredible, and understand how much time and effort you put in and how many hours of volunteer and talk and conversation you put in. And from I'm sure all of us to you, thank you so much for that. I'm going to be real quick. If there's any questions, would love to answer. Really want you to understand how grateful I am and thankful I am every day that I was hired this year in this district, and Silvercrest and Victor Point, little pieces of heaven, and just really thankful for the opportunity. I didn't realize what big shoes I was stepping in at both schools, really, until really have dove in. And it's been an honor and a privilege to represent both schools. And kind of like Mr. Blando referred to earlier, I think we have certain things that keep us talking, and there's some negative things that happen. And I know this thing is Eugene Field is a big one. But there are so many things in the school district that are superb, top-notch, that we can really celebrate every day. My daughter's a freshman at Silverton High School, and she comes home every day, just can't believe what a place that is for her education. And my son's at Robert Frost and just loves the school and loves his teacher. And so I think there's a lot to celebrate here, and just I'll start there.
Thank you.
Hopefully you have, I just kind of presented or prepared a little bit of just the presentation, so I don't have to go through that all for you. But just always believe that 3 or 4 goals and doing them very well is important. And so those are the 4 things. And it was awesome coming in at the very beginning this year with the district going through the visioning process, and that I was able to learn where you've been the last year and how I could kind of set my sights to support our board and to support our superintendent within our schools. And really in our goals, I've tried to do that. First one's that all of our students will be on grade level. Second goal has to do with absenteeism, and the 2 pieces that I'll hit tonight really quick will be about absenteeism and on grade level. Kind of my job to you is to present on grade level math for the district, but I'll also take a look at both schools' attendance and on grade level. Just creating a safe and awesome education setting for our students. And the last one is to have a sustainable educational setting where Victor Point and Silvercrest are that excellent school viewed by you, our community, our kids, and we're really focusing on student engagement in the classroom. As a district and as a school, our priorities. So just a little bit on attendance. We've kind of set up incentives throughout the year. I can tell you that in both of our schools, attendance has been an awesome conversation to have. It's new, I know. I know you've heard a lot on attendance, but it's been great conversation, and our kids are rallying and starting to really get it and understand why it's so important to be in class. Our first incentive was the first 30-day challenge. We challenged our students to have perfect attendance for the first 30 days because we know how a student starts school is how their year will go. And there's a ton of data to kind of go through that. But we set that up, and you can see the first 30-day challenge, Silvercrest School went from a 95.8 last year to a 97.3, shows a 1.5% increase. And Victor Point went from a 96.4 to a 97.7. And I know at 1.5 or 1.3 doesn't seem like a lot, but attendance percentages, that is a huge, huge jump for our schools. Because if you look at the past 5 state report cards, you'll be from a 94.8 to a 95.2, barely fluctuates. So to see a 1.5% increase, I think is a huge success. And so that was our first challenge. Our second challenge was October 10th to November 10th. We wanted each class, we wanted more of a class incentive instead of putting it on the individual student. And 98% of our classes hit the 95% mark in both schools. And we did school incentives, we did class incentives for those classrooms. They celebrated that success, and we did some extra recess and PE for the top 2 classes in both schools. And this challenge we're in is a tough challenge. It's December, January, and February. It's called the 3 and 30, so we want our students to miss no more than 3 days in December, January, and February. And those are the toughest months of the school year. You have holiday breaks, you have Christmas trips that families take, and it's the illness. I mean, we have a ton of illness hitting. And so our incentive for those students that make that is a school-wide pizza party. And I got a feeling, I was thinking we were going to break the bank on this one, but our attendance has dropped a little within those 3 months. So I think we're going to be okay on budget, but I don't know if we're going to hit our goal. So, but that's a little bit on our attendance, and we plan to really just keep showing that. And our kids are making the difference. They're telling their parents they want to be in school, they don't want to miss. Please set your appointments outside of school. And we've actually had to go the other way. Hey, if you're throwing up or you got a temperature, please stay home. Because, I mean, we got kids wanting to come so much that they want those incentives. And you put a little positive out in front of those kids, and they'll do, what you set out to do because they want. Where we've seen it the most is in our 5th, 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, because those are the older kids get, the more they understand how to stay home and how not. And we've seen the biggest increase in our 5th through 8th. K4 has been an increase, but those, they're sick, they're sick. The older kids get, the harder it is. So. On grade level, reading and math, just a little bit to report to you. We look at this every day. We look at it in our care team meetings and in our staff meetings. Actually, Wednesday, we're going through every student at Victor Point that is not on grade level and finding out, hey, what's our intervention system look like? What kind of supports are we putting in front of that student? And so we're putting a ton of energy into that goal. And we have the STAR assessment this year to take a look at that because we're in transition from OAKS to Smarter Balance. And that's kind of the assessment we're looking at for that. Victor Point, we're at a 74% school-wide in reading and an 82 in math. And at Silvercrest right now, we're at a 50% reading and a 70% math. And so you would see, at least I would see, that reading at Silvercrest right now is a priority, and really finding out 50% is definitely not good enough, and how do we get that to increase, and same type of things, care team, data team, taking a look at that. District-wide, so that's kind of what I'm reporting to you as our district visionary goals. District-wide, really focused on grades 2 through 8 because K1's more early assessment. It's a little harder to give you that idea, and this is a little more hard evidence and a little easier data to determine. But kind of goes through grade 2, we're at 70%, grade 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 all the way down. 76, 72, 79 5th grade, 76 grade, 68 7th grade, and 73 8th grade. Few highlights for the year. Pretty neat to see Victor Point and Silvercrest staffs kind of rally together. Victor Point staff kind of took Silvercrest staff early on the year and just said, hey, what can we do for that staff? That staff's went through a couple hard years, as you're all aware. And we've just had some staff members that have stepped up and said, we want to take that on. And so monthly they're writing cards, delivering baskets to the school, and they've each adopted members of Prattam School and Silvercrest and just go the extra special mile. And now that's kind of paying off because Prattam and Silvercrest are writing back and doing some different things. So I think that mutual has been really fun to watch coming in from my shoes. PTC and the boosters at both schools, I couldn't tell you. You got teachers at both schools that I can't tell you, hands down, superb. You got kids and you got parents and staff and community that have pride in their schools. So much pride, so much fun to be around. 30 parents sitting there at a booster in a PTC meeting saying, how can we do this for our kids? Whether it be OMSI, whether it be science kits, whether it be extra field trips, our parents do not say no. We'll find a way to get it done, and that's been a huge highlight for me to watch. The communication at Silvercrest has been increasing, I think, over the last couple of years. It's just hard, and so I've really been focused on how do we better communicate and get that out. And so email lists, we went from almost a 0% email list to we're about 87% we have now of parents and getting stuff out all the time. I think that's a priority for me. And then we've really been focused on monthly focuses, school-wide, finding ways to motivate our child. I think as important as reading and math and on grade level, how do we give our kids other avenues, and how do we show them life skills? Whether you're a teacher, whether you're a coach, I think we have a great opportunity every day to teach a lesson to kids. And I think some of those lessons are more important than reading and math. So we try to incorporate all that and make them all important. But our school-wide focuses, the first month we focused on kindness and anti-bullying and hit it hard with a ton of different things. I wish I had an hour to tell you all about it. November was creativity, December is imagination, and this month we're on doing our very best. And what we try to do is show our kids examples of that. Doing our very best boards, videos on motivation on how to do your very best, coming up with charts and graphs in classrooms and placing it all over classrooms. What does doing our very best look like? Because we know that kids that do their very best and learn that life skill will be that much more successful out of high school, and that's what we care more about. Not the 8th grade, but where are they as people and community members when they're 22, 23 into college, and how are they making a difference? How are they being a great husband and wife? And how are they doing their very best? So we try to focus on that as much as everything else. And saw a quote last month and thought it was really neat. And you try to look for things that remind you of why you're in the profession, or remind you what your goals and what should I be doing for these schools. And I think that one really sticks out, that trustworthy leaders strike the right balance between pushing too hard and pushing too little. They are soft on people and tough on values, goals, and expectations. They combine personal humility, exercising restraint and modesty, with tenacity, me and Linda like that word, and the professional will to see that the work of teaching is accomplished and accomplished well. And then, especially being new in my position, trust matters, and to successful leaders in all their schools. Any questions?
Questions for Jamie?
I just want to say, keep up the good work, Jamie.
I will give it my very best.
Yes.
Yeah.
Just for the record, I've heard lots of good comments about you from this year so far, so thank you for that.
Yeah.
Thank you for what you've brought to those schools.
Yeah, thank you.
And thank you for these.
Oh, you're welcome.
Yep. Linda.
Okay, Special Services Department. I just wanted to share a few things with you. First off, we have 80 people in our department, which is wonderful. We have great professionals that care deeply about our kids. We have 33 certified staff members and 47 classified. And this year's been a year of change. We've had several people retire. We've had people asking for different assignments. So 30 of my 80, or about 37.5% of my team's actually in new roles this year. And then I've hired 22 new staff members this last year. So it's been an incredible roller coaster, beating the walls, looking for just the right person. We're looking at people from even outside the state of Oregon. So we have an amazing team that have stepped up to the bat to support our kids. Then some of the programs that we're involved in, one of them is called Medicaid School-Based Health Services. This was the backdoor approach federal government decided to develop to support special education funding. So essentially what we're able to do, about 13 of our special needs kids with doctor's notices of what we need to provide at school, we're able to actually build Medicaid for them. So we brought in $262,429.74 through our school-based health services program last year. So we're really proud of that, and we're looking at little steps every month. What are other avenues of opportunity for us to gain additional funding through that system? So that's been wonderful. And then the other Medicaid program we participate in is the Medicaid Administrative Claiming, which is basically a time analysis that we do 3 times a year. And with that program, we earn $213,581.13. So it's amazing the funds that we're able to obtain through Medicaid, being very diligent, very structured, and very purposeful, and with the highest degree of integrity for both of those programs. Then I'm excited to share that we participated with the Silverton Lions Club, as well as the State of Oregon's Lions Club, to do a vision screening for all of our kindergartners. And if you look at the second page, this is a report that we sent out to the families for each student. For this student, there was actually a recommendation for further eye examination. So our school nurse, our health wellness nurse, Chris Bonko called the families and exchanged some information, shared information about the vision. So that was a really, really great opportunity. Next year, we're going to expand it to more grades. Participating in this vision screening with the Lions Club cost the district $200. So we got a lot out of that.
Wow.
We're going to be teaming with the Lions Club again for hearing screenings, and those will take place in March. Like I said, we started a wellness program and the special needs program. So our special needs program is for Sue Ellen, and she works with our IEP kids and 504 kids that have health protocols. We're up to 113 protocols with our special ed kids. So there's lots of health needs that our students are rolling in with. Then our wellness nurse is really focusing on, she's helped with this vision and hearing screenings, but really looking at shots and just keeping our kids healthy and safe. So that's been a wonderful thing. We're collaborating with Assistive Technology Northwest to bring us some pretty comprehensive augmentative communication and assistive technology services. And those are the services that we need for our kids that are the most impacted, need the highest level of support. So we're thrilled about that. And then our district's been on the bandwagon for grants, and I need to get on board with that too. We're going to be focusing for Voc Rehab, trying to fund a jobs coach. So we're really excited about that. And right now today we have 489 special needs kids we're serving, and they are a great group of kids. And if you just go to the last page, in special education, I'll have to put my detective hat on, and that's kind of what I was doing with the attendance. You step back and you think you know what's going on, but then you look at the data and it's like, oh no, you didn't know what's going on. So the top chart, I took just my special ed kids, and I wanted to look at who missed more than 10 days of school, who missed 5 to 9.5, and who had 90% attendance rating. So you can see we have several special ed students that are not meeting that 90% attendance rate. And that just goes along with what the principals are doing too, that we're really trying to focus on getting the kids in school. If you go down to the next box, I tried to look at perspective of September to December. We did have one student miss 40 days. We had some that missed 30 to 39.5. And I must note, those kids with the highest attendance rates, a couple has pretty significant mental health, and the other ones have some health needs. So those kids are definitely on my radar. But then I just give you kind of a range of where our kids are.
Is that the primary reason, Linda, or is it parental?
No, those kids
correction?
really are, yeah, in the hospital, mental health, so. And then the big aha moment, 83 of my special ed kids had less than 90% attendance. And when I looked at that and that added up, that's a loss of 1,132.5 instructional days for my special ed kids between September and now. And then I wanted to put that in perspective with all kids. We have 474, that's total kids, or 391 just general ed kids miss 90%. They're not meeting that attendance bar. So that's really huge. And when I got a report with all my special ed kids and then all the kids, and if you add up every single day that our kids have missed so far, we've lost 8,062.5 instructional hours already. That's a lot. Wow. That's also a whole lot of money that's not sitting in our classrooms. The more our attendance improves, our funding levels would come up. So I think it's a very prudent that we're really looking at that 90%. We can have the best schools and the best educational programs, but if our kids aren't there to get the benefit, they're not getting the benefit. So I'm glad we're focusing on that. And then the last page just talks about high school graduation. We try to be very thoughtful in the senior year of our kids. When kids graduate from the high school and go into college, if they have an IEP and they show up to college with their fancy IEP, the college could care less about that. But they care very much about medical statements and 504 plans. So when we get to that senior year and we have students that, our special ed students are going on to college, we switch those kids over to 504s. And those kids are included in the attendance rate with everybody else. So even with switching the kids over to 504, the rest of the kids, when you look at the far right-hand column, we had 24 kids about every year graduate. So that's a big chunk. And the ones that aren't meeting that graduation rate are the kids in our basic skills or functional skills classrooms are pretty impacted. So I'm really proud of the hard work our high school team does. You'll see a big increase in the last cohort, and I think a lot of that is due to the work samples our kids are working on. So we have amazing kids that are doing really, really great things, and it's really neat that senior year to be very thoughtful about each kid. So we'll keep monitoring that. We're always going to have kids that a standard diploma is not what serves them best, maybe a modified diploma. I know there's some talk in the special ed realm that instead of making a modified diploma, maybe calling it a vocational program, our kids with modified diplomas are able to meet those skills when they're able to do it hands-on. So that's a little bit from the Special Services Department. We do have amazing kids, and I'm so proud every day to look at our special ed classrooms and listen to the administrative team. Every day is a great day for these kids, and I'm just really proud of everything we've been able to do together. So, any questions?
Thank you, Linda. Good report. Okay, board reports. Any board reports? Correspondence? Has it been?
Nothing that you haven't received.
Okay. Lots. Yeah, lots of correspondence. Second audience with visitors. Would anyone like to address the board? Okay, moving on to action items. First one, approve financial audit report for fiscal year ending June 30th, 2014.
Move for approval. Second.
Move. Irv seconded. Moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. Second action item, consideration of resolution number 1-12-2015 authorizing discontinued use of Eugene Field School.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to move that we table this resolution until the board has had a chance to review it more carefully. We just received this a few days ago in our board packet, and it's not something that the board crafted, and I think it would be nice if we could talk about it a little bit, review it before we actually act on it.
I agree with that sentiment. I think it needs a public input to flesh it out a little bit.
Do we need a motion to do that, or do we just not take any other action on it?
It needs to move and then obtain a second for a table.
That sounds like Tom
And then we
seconded.
vote.
Oh,
We
yeah,
don't know
yeah.
whether to table it.
Okay,
Yes,
okay.
so I did
Okay.
move.
Yeah, I know that. Okay. And did you second it, Tom?
Yeah.
Okay. Moved and seconded to table consideration of resolution 1/12/2015. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Could you raise your hands?
Yeah, let's do a hand vote. All in favor of tabling resolution 1/12/15, please raise your hand. Opposed? Okay, motion fails. Anything else on that one then?
I move for approval or adoption of Resolution 1-12-2015. And if anybody needs me to read it, I'll read it. Otherwise, I think everybody has it.
I'd second that.
Moved and seconded to adopt the resolution 1/12/2015. And we're going to do a hand vote again. All in favor of adopting the resolution? Opposed? Motion passes. Okay. Okay, that's everything. We're going to, for our regular session, we're going to adjourn to executive session under ORS 192660, exempt public records, personnel records. Thank you for coming, everyone. We'll take about a 5-minute break.